Voice is the fourth installment in the Whispering Corridors franchise, a series of standalone horror movies that aren't connected in any way, but instead share similar themes, with each one being set at an all-girls high school. So you don't need to watch them in any order, and there are a few that I personally wouldn't recommend watching at all. But today I'm going to be talking about Voice, a haunting story that opens up with a high school girl being murdered by a flying sheet of music, only to then awaken the next day as a ghost trapped inside of the school, which sets up for quite an extraordinary premise, as it's a horror movie from the perspective of a ghost trying to find out why she was killed and coming to terms with the fact that she is dead. But as quickly as this horror is sprung onto you with a striking introduction, coated in red and accompanied by a chilling piece of music, it kind of pulls back to focus on a more personal horror from the perspective of a ghost. And not necessarily in a way that's really scary to watch, but more so in a way that's scary to think about, as it's pretty frightening conceptually. Even more so because the victim is understandably quite fragile as she comes to terms with the situation. And because of that, the movie is more driven by this overwhelming sadness that comes from the suddenness of her death and the rapid realization that she has become a ghost. To make things worse, her body and ghost is trapped within the school, and no one at the school even knows she's dead. But when she attempts to call out to her best friend, the movie becomes more tender, as the two have retained their connection even after death, to the point where her friend is the only one who can hear her voice, which offers a unique perspective on both ends and quickly creates a compelling drama that introduces a strong emotional core early on, alongside a mystifying atmosphere as they attempt to investigate her death, with a number of interesting ideas surrounding this concept, as well as some suitable and creative horror elements that keeps things fresh. So when it comes to the horror, it's pretty effective for the most part, as it gradually goes from an isolated perspective of fear and develops to exhibit a duality of how this horror is perceived from the perspective of the ghost and the human, as the ghost begins hearing voices and seeing things that may be linked to her death, while her friend is also experiencing the paranormal simply by engaging in this form of communication, which lends itself to a handful of scary moments and a number of terrific ideas that revolve around their connection and friendship. And without spoiling anything, I think it works very well to complement the horror and the drama and add more weight to the story. That being said, while I really liked what the horror brings to the movie, I don't want to make this movie sound scarier than it actually is, as the drama and this friendship is really what's at the forefront here, which is what you should come to expect with any of the movies in this franchise. And in this case, the narrative elements are strong enough to keep the movie interesting, as it's quite an evocative story, driven by a fascinating perspective that slowly unravels to offer a chilling and haunting experience with a somewhat sinister undertone. What further complements the movie is the overall presentation, with some effective cinematography and art direction that blends a number of nice visual ideas alongside a color palette that feels quite muted when it comes to the mystery and drama, and then ramps up in vibrancy to shift the atmosphere, as the school is lit entirely with these bright red lights. There's also some very good sound design that works to develop some of the story and horror elements, as well as a somewhat unnerving soundtrack that enhances the viewing experience as it varies in tone to express a range of emotions with its fearful, somber, and melancholic nature. Overall, it's a pretty strong package with solid direction from Choi Ik-Hwan and fine performances from Kim Ok-bin, Seo Ji-Hye, and Cha Ye-Ryun, who all made their big screen debuts with this movie, beating out the likes of Han Hyo-ju, Jung Yoo-mi, and Park Shin-hye. So I would highly recommend watching this movie, as it's easily one of the best entries in the Whispering Corridors franchise. And while it's not my personal favourite, it's a very close second, with quite possibly the most memorable and creative concept and an incredible approach to the horror and story.